Who's going to bring us in?
You can see as you're driving if you want.
Oh, yeah, fair enough. Hello and welcome back to the Renewables podcast. You may be able to notice and potentially hear that we're not in our normal location. We are out on the road, and we'll tell you why that is in just a minute. But before we get to the topic, how are you doing, Sam?
I'm all right after our bit of a decompression session that we've just had. We were going to film this and record this podcast almost as soon as we got in the van, but it was kind of like, no, I need to moan a little bit. So anyone that's seen my social media over the past week or two will know that I've done quite a lot of that, and I don't like doing it, but I've just had to do it. But I'm all right. I feel a bit better now that we've had that bit of time. But yeah, I'm okay now. How about you?
Yes, I'm all right. I think we did have a good old session of complaints that we could never air publicly for our customers and competitors to maybe revel in. But it is nice to get it off your chest, isn't it? I think, and we all feel those frustrations with global events and stuff, and we'll maybe have a conversation about that later on as well.
Yeah.
But today we're on our way to the Happy Electrician.
Can you believe it's called the Happy Electrician after what we've been talking about?
We definitely need a dose of therapy from the Happy Electricians. And for those of you who are watching and don't know what that is, it's Malcolm Duncan and Mike Jones have brought a community together now over a year ago, and we were part of the Trailblazer group. And we have a regular meet every 6 to 12 months-ish. And I think this time they've got some new members coming along as well, haven't they?
Probably. Yeah, I'm not too sure. I wasn't sure if there was new members or not. I've almost been unplugged from it to a little degree, but I've been looking forward to getting down and seeing everybody, because we have a monthly meeting, don't we, virtually, over Google, whatever it is, Google video call. But what's really nice when you actually get sat around a table and actually speak to people face to face, and obviously with all of Mike and Malcolm's experience there, it just makes all the difference. The last one was at your place, wasn't it? Your one-to-one training.
Yeah, we did last December, and I think it's always nice to get together with people in person for the social around it as well. So we're going out for a curry tonight, which will be nice, and a chance to decompress further. And they're not. The aim isn't really to teach you how to build like £1 million businesses. It's to try and get happier in the businesses you've got, I suppose, isn't it? And
I think it's actually a bit of an antidote to that. I think it's an antidote to people expecting that everybody goes into business to build, a multi-million pound business that allows them to buy a Lamborghini and their own private island. It's one of them where it's not everybody is in business, and actually the majority of people are in business to do that. Yeah. We're in business to support our families. We're in business to hopefully work in an area that is of a passion and earn money to have a comfortable life. And and that's certainly my goal. But everyone's different, I suppose.
Yeah, for sure. And that time per kind of thing hits us all, doesn't it? And I think Mike certainly led me to reset some of that in what I was trying to do, and it's an ongoing battle, most definitely. And yeah, if you are watching this as an electrician and you're interested in getting involved, I think Mike and Malcolm are scoping that out somewhat in the weeks and months ahead. So I'll drop links in the description where you can go off and get in touch with them. But the kind of topic I had in mind for our first little chat in the van, and we may have a few, was around some of the recent sort of government moves to do with the global events in terms of like the balcony solar that you've been talking about a lot on your socials, and I've been talking about the other aspect to that which the government are involved with around training. So the two are maybe more linked than either of us really realised. So there's a conversation around all of that. But do you want to start by setting out what the balcony stuff actually is?
I would love to start out with this. So it seems that Ed Miliband has decided that to try and combat energy prices and people under strain with their energy bills because of this whole increasing cost that is probably going to come and hit us on the next price cap review, which I don't think is far off. It might be April. It's not far off at all. That he's trying to find ways, and the government are trying to find ways to allow people to generate their own power and everything like that. So I'm kind of behind the theory of, how do we unlock more people to take control of their own energy, store it, or just buy it when it's cheapest and use it and load shift. But what they've kind of seen is the success of schemes or products like balcony solar PV systems in Europe, where a customer might hang 2 or 3, well, usually 2 panels, quite small panels, on like a special bracket that positions on their balcony, and then those cables feed back to a little plug-in inverter that is plugged into their downstairs sockets or their flat sockets, and that then back feeds that circuit with energy, and like a normal system would do, reduces the amount of imported energy that the customer needs to buy in. Now, there's a lot to unpack with this, but the thing I want to get clear right from the start, because I didn't actually make this very clear in my DIY solar rant that I did on my Instagram, is that I'm not actually worried that this will take work away from solar installers. I think, like we've been discussing, Mark, I think actually it may even increase solar sales down the line, because it'll kind of prove concept for people. But the big thing that I'm most disappointed about is just how like a click of the fingers, and suddenly we've devalued the solar industry to a centre aisle product in Lidl, to a point where people review their training, review their overheads, review MCS, review NIC, NAPIT, and go, well, why am I doing all of this to effectively sell the same product that they can get from Lidl and just plug in to a socket? And all the hoops we jumped through in terms of bi-directional circuit protection, there was a whole amendment on that in the regulations, and suddenly we're going to be happy with a customer that has a downstairs socket circuit that's on a split load board that now receives an injection of anywhere up to 800 watts just for one system. And there's been speculation on, well, what stops people buying 3 or 4 of them and plugging them in if they've got the space for them. So I just think I'm really disappointed that we're going down this road when the government has already set out their intention to put meat on the bones of this warm homes plan. And like a lot of people have commented, and I feel exactly the same way on my Instagram reel, is that why haven't they just made that warm homes plan even more attractive than they were going to, in light of what's happening in the world, and just basically saying to people, right, we were going to do it as a grant for the people on the lowest incomes, but now because of the energy price increase, we noticed that this is going to really negatively affect people on even middle incomes. So we're actually going to increase the grant section of this warm homes plan to give you 3, 4, 5 grand, whatever, off the price of it, and allow you to get a bigger grid connected solar and battery system and heat pump, depending on what the customer wants, and actually allow the grid to take some benefit from this. The DNO process can hopefully be improved as well, because I noticed this was also in the release, was that they're going to push the DNOs to make it easier to do DNO connections. Like, how long have we been trying to get them to do that? And then the click of the fingers, and suddenly stuff starts happening. So there's a lot more to say about it, but I need to pull myself back from the brink a little bit.
No, I mean, you are right to be frustrated with it, and I certainly feel that frustration. And I think it's important to emphasise that as installers, it's not sour grapes that we feel like we're going to be losing market share. And some of the comments that come back on the social media posts that you've put out around kind of expensive rip-off solar installers and stuff and all that, that's not the reality. It's what it does is devalues what that actual technology is and makes it appear that it's very much plug and play. And as you've just explained, all of the stuff and the hoops we have to jump through in terms of our training and our memberships and our registrations and all the rest of it, we have all of that on our side of that fence and the cost burden around it, and then it's just appearing in the middle aisle at Lidl. I mean, I'd said on my kind of socials that I don't see it as that much of a big deal, because I don't think many people are going to actually choose to adopt it, because 800 watts to a kilowatt and a half isn't that great a deal of generation anyway. And when it's positioned on a balcony in the UK and the kind of housing stock we have, that is very different to out in Europe, the kind of light potential for those systems as well is much reduced. So I don't think it's going to be that much of an attractive option. And for me, it's more of a virtuous effort of government to be seen to be doing something when they can do very little about the cost of energy in the wholesale marketplace at the minute.
Yeah.
So they've just come forward with that. The scary part to it is, as you've alluded, the fact that through the click of their fingers, whatever they want to happen, regardless of the safety concerns and everything else, just happens. And we've now got the potential for kit to be installed in people's homes that is non-compliant with our wiring standards. So our wiring standards actually prohibit the use of that kind of equipment. We couldn't connect and deliver that kind of stuff as professional installers, yet you can buy it. To my knowledge, there's not currently a product standard for this kit either, and plug it in your home just because the government have said you can do so. That part of it is really frightening, and it kind of brings the question towards our industry of things. So the likes of the IET, the ECA, NIC, NAPIT, MCS, and all the rest of these organisations, is you're supposed to be our voice into government, representing us. How the hell have we ended up in a position where our wiring regulations, our wiring standard, the things we are told is the minimum, we work from and above that? That's the messaging that's always pushed at it. And now, government's bringing something out that's beneath it, and that's all fine. Consumers can go on Amazon and buy it, go down the little middle aisle, pick it up and chuck it in the basket, and not a diddly squat of anything is going to happen about it. So it does bring that question, why do we play by all those rules? And we've seen some of the social media people out there throw back against that. David Savory with his video about leaving the NIC, and you start to look at it and think, well, government are kind of moving the playing field a little bit. Maybe as electricians we need to become a bit more agile if we're going to stay in those marketplaces and compete. Not so much around the balcony solar stuff, but it's happening there. I'm thinking of Elon Musk bringing Tesla power to the market. We know what Octopus and Eon are doing around energy retailers and their solar provisions and heat pumps and stuff. Maybe we need to start playing that game as well and separating ourselves a little bit from our industry of things, much as I don't want to have to do that. I think to operate a viable and workable business, competing in that market space, we might have to.
Yeah, I mean, it's that divide and conquer, though, isn't it? It's kind of like we almost need to be together to really keep pushing the standard up, because the more and more we all divide out and try and do our own thing, you end up having the smaller and smaller voice. And I think that's what can be powerful with the right governing body or the right competent person scheme with the right outlook. It goes back to their original kind of forms, there to speak up for the members and everything like that. So in concept, you think, well, it's going to work really well. I think the IET, I heard a recording from, is it Andy Coles?
Mark Coles. Andy Coles, the footballer.
Yeah, sorry, I got mixed up there. Reliving my youth. He was on, I think it was Radio 4, and they were chatting about what he thought about the plug-in solar, DIY solar kind of idea. And he made a fantastic point. He said he doesn't see how this can actually be quickly rolled out, because equipment can be sold, and I'm paraphrasing, I've not got it word for word in front of me, as you'll probably be able to see, but he said he doesn't think it can be quickly rolled out because we are on a much different and a much older electrical system than Europe, because Europe was pretty much flattened during the war. So like you have Germany and places like that that have more modern circuit protection. You've got they're also quicker to kind of get rid of some of this outdated RCD technology and everything like that. And suddenly we're saying that we are happy for somebody to bi-directionally put energy onto a circuit that's got an RCD that isn't a bi-directional RCD, that's on a split load board and all this. And I think he made a really good case for it in the short window that he had. But I can imagine, like, if I'm going to their shoes, into the IET shoes, into NAPIT's shoes, into NIC shoes, I bet they're just like, oh, goodness sake, like, it's another thing they're going to have to fight now, because they're going to have members like ourselves going, what are you doing about this, that we can't have this? And they've also got the government saying, well, we need to do something about the whole energy side of things. But I feel like when in politics, there's only like a certain amount of like political capital that these politicians have got to spend, and I feel like they've almost opened up an argument that actually no one was ever really supporting in the UK. Like, there was never mad outcry for people to have balcony systems, because shock horror, not a huge amount of people have a balcony. We have a bit of a different way of living in the UK as well, and I think they had everything there, and they're still away. You know, they're still not 100% committed to all this, but they've got a mechanism that they've already released, that they've already done some thinking about because they've released it, that actually it might just need updating now to reflect the place that the world is in. And that's this warm home scheme. Like if it was me, if I was stood there, I'd be like, wow, this is such an opportunity for us to push on with this warm home scheme. Like this is music to our ears for people to actually get on board with the warm home scheme, because the world is in a much more difficult place, but they've almost like opened up and spent some political capital on an argument. I just don't feel is one that's even worth really justifying. You know, we said earlier, Mark, off the podcast, like we'd prefer it if people that wanted to have a little DIY system bought one of those Anchor or EcoFlow kind of style camping packs and just put a few pounds in their garden with the battery propping them up and just charging that, and then take it inside the house later on and plug their TV and stuff into an extension lead or something like that, so that it's more of an appliance-based system rather than some sort of shonky generation-based thing that's backfeeding old infrastructure that probably has faults on it that's never been tested or inspected, and suddenly we're saying that has to be the route that we take. It's just, yeah, I just feel like they've maybe missed a trick with what they already had planned.
Yeah, for sure. And if you think of like all the houses out there that'll still be on wooden consumer units with fuse wires in, we change them every week, and you know that kind of setup's going to exist, and the kind of safety element around that. I mean, there's a big conversation with the safety side of it and how they sync and desync from the grid, because if you imagine a huge tower block of flats, and if they've all got balcony solar, the grid goes down and they're supposed to turn off, but if they're all there sort of generating and pointing at each other, they maybe don't see that. I don't know how that technology would actually behave when it's plugged in maybe around 100 homes. And
also the type testing on that.
Yeah.
Like, are these going to be type tested inverters that shut down? It's like you get Temu based blooming, you know, as soon as there's a demand for something, there's going to be a Temu product for it, isn't there?
Absolutely. And you look at like the ENA register that we have to work from, are they going to have something like that for this plug-in kit? Is it going to be controlled and regulated? Who's going to monitor it? And yeah, I just think that whole concept needs safely delivering, and I don't see that being the case. And I think for a lot of these high-rise properties where they are going to struggle to have solar provision, having access to something like that is a really useful thing for them. I just don't think it should have been amplified by government in the way it has as some sort of solution to the energy crisis, because it's more of a niche thing for those who aren't really able to access it any other way.
Yeah.
Rather than it coming out into the mass market and encouraging people to sling this in the gardens, and as you said, have cables leading through letterboxes and window openings or whatever else, getting damaged, chewed by rodents, and not having any sort of maintenance given to it whatsoever. And you know, just asking for something horrible to happen, aren't you? And I agree, if you were to go down that kind of principle, having a simple system that you put outside or on your balcony and filled up a little power bank, and yeah, we've still got the stored issue of the lithium that you would then be bringing in charged use, but you'd be getting that anyway if someone was load shifting, plugging that product in overnight to charge it up. So that's kind of a risk you'd have to mitigate regardless, as people attempt to buy cheap power overnight and all the rest of those things. So I think that would be a short-term workaround until there is a way of delivering this more safely. And as you've said, really, that warm home scheme, if they just get that up and running and actually tell us what that's going to look like, a lot of these people might choose different options anyway, because there may be a way of having, I don't know, some facade solar panels maybe. Certainly when they're constructing these high-rise dwellings now, they could look towards that, because they seem to like cladding these buildings in stuff anyway. Why not clad them in some solar panels and cover that off at that point? You know, there's all kinds of approaches they can take when the funding's accessible and we know how that's going to look, and it just seems a bit of a knee-jerk reaction and not too uncommon with how politics works more widely, does it? And it's grabbed a few headlines, and I think it detracts from what proper solar installation looks like, and we already get that pushback from consumers about, well, it's just plug and play. Why do you companies need to charge so much? We talked a little bit about that with Gary Does Solar, didn't we, when he came on and had a chat with us. So those kind of feelings are out there, and I think all that kind of messaging can do is emphasise the points of view of those people that, yeah, we're right, look at what the government's doing, and these solar people are wrong. And you just discourage people from even having the conversation with professional installers, and you're ever more likely to see shonky stuff chucked into homes, and the prospect of that terrible event happening become ever more likely.
Yeah, absolutely. And it raises another issue with it, like your insurance companies. Are they going to be happy with you having, a big lithium battery that's never going to get inspected because it's just a off-the-shelf product that's maybe not got type, it's not properly type tested, it's not, it just feels like a proper kind of black hole that we've opened up. I just don't really understand why, because like you say, it's not even for a meaningful size system. It's a tiny system that isn't going to make naff all difference to someone's energy bill, really, I don't think. But I might be wrong, and I'm happy to say in a year's time, when it's the next big thing and everybody's getting it, it's made the UK a better place, I'm happy to eat my hat. But I just don't feel like it is going to be that way. And it opened up a bit of a wider conversation on my social media, where we were starting to talk about, and it's that age-old thing of, why is someone even able to just go in and buy like a consumer unit and all this other sort of stuff, where gas and everything else is so much more protected, but you kind of like, well, why is anyone able to do this type of work? Because on my social media, like you get with all kind of social media, it's rough with the smooth, and some of the comments on there are saying, well, finally an antidote to solar spark is charging far too much and everything like that. And you kind of, that's what's annoyed me the most. It's devalued that sector, and the sector isn't taken seriously when you start getting a centre aisle product that the government themselves has kind of backed. There'll always be shonky solar equipment, there always will be that. But when you actually have like the Secretary of State for Energy saying this is a good idea, it gives it the gravitas that it needs for people to actually take it seriously. And then you start to go, well, why do we need electricians to even do it? And you get back into that thing of, well, what else can I do? What other work can I do around the house? I've already got my own solar panel system, so what else can I do? And even on that Mark Cole's interview, it was I think it's Sarah Montague. She said, how do we remove the requirement for expensive electricians? Something in the lead up to the question. I was there, and I said I would have ripped her head off if she'd said that to me. But obviously, they've only got a short space of time to try and defend it. And I just think there's this perception that tradespeople are expensive, and tradespeople are rip-off merchants. And actually, like I've said to a lot of people on my social media, show me where you've worked that out. Because actually, my experience with pretty much every single company I've ever met or ever had any dealings with, are just most of the time trying to cover costs and have a little bit of fat on their back in terms of profit. I've not met, I think I maybe met one or two that have been going crazy with the money, but the rest of them, and the ones that I speak to online, we're all in the same boat. We're just trying to make a decent living to reflect the risk that our companies take and that we take personally in this type of sector. And I think as soon as you start putting a DIY in front of any sort of serious special locations in the regs, you're just asking for trouble.
Yeah, absolutely. And the consumers out there who may be looking at that and thinking along those lines, I can totally understand why they would get to that conclusion as a novice to our industry. That they would see that. I'd see it at a different industry and think the same. But there is a video out from Rigol Electrical, Leon, which is about the sale of electrical equipment in part to DIYers and people having a go at electrics. Sadly, a young boy died in a pub car park garden area due to an electric fault that the landlords had put into place through their meddling with the wiring system. And there's a conversation that he's been having with politicians about kind of changes to the way electrical materials are sold in the UK, because at the minute, as you've said, you can go into a DIY shed and buy a fuse box and buy most of which everything else to rewire your own house if you want. And you know, that value in terms of safety of the electrical industry just isn't there in terms of a protected job title that they're trying to get brought into place up in Scotland. And, you know, the people asking for this stuff aren't doing it to try and monopolise things and make money. They're doing it because they've got genuine safety concerns that when things are done wrong, people can die and stuff can set on fire and all these horrible things happen. And it's that risk scale that we all live and die on as citizens in the UK. Are we happy with that risk level to sit in the world of DIYers wiring homes up and chucking solar PV systems on houses and dealing with the consequences of that because of the global energy market? Or are we not? And at the minute, I think we've got that risk scale out of kilter. And the reason for it, I think, is that the government have been under pressure around fuel costs and drilling in the North Sea and their policy around not doing any of that, and to try and get that messaging squashed at the minute. And by the way, I don't think drilling in the North Sea is going to do anything to the prices we're paying in the UK from what I've seen. So I don't think that is an argument they really needed to ever win. But their reaction to that has been to come forward with this kind of stuff that, well, we're doing this instead and we're doing the other and this will get your bills down. And it kind of makes that other question go away, because it's a difficult one for them to actually deal with, because there is still resources in the North Sea that we could potentially extract. And, you know, that's a lazy argument for some of their political opponents to make right now and cause them damage, I suppose. So they're trying to get back into the public's mind and eye that, well, we're doing this instead, and it hasn't washed out well in our industry as a result.
No, it hasn't. And there's pros and cons to a lot of those arguments, and that, you know, there is in most cases the UK's energy mix is a mix, as you would think. You know, it's a mix of different energy, and we know that, you know, as much as we would love gas and oil to dissipate tomorrow and see all the environmental benefits of it, it's a fundamental part of a lot of our products and a lot of our critical infrastructure, that it can't just disappear. And I do think really that the true freedom is in the renewables in terms of how we generate our own power and store our own power. But that doesn't mean that there's not a place for gas and oil long term, and there is. But if we can reduce that, then happy days. So I think in the UK we are in that kind of sticky middle position where we're trying to transition over from it into renewables, but we're not there with the renewables yet to enable that to just happen overnight. But we're in that no man's land where we're kind of half in, half out, and I think that's what makes the conversation so much harder. Is that because it depends on the government that comes in, you can be half in. It's like the hokey cokey, kind of in and out. On, you know, do you reopen the gas and oil fields, or do you just go full steam ahead into renewables? And that short-termism in terms of, right, oh well, our 4-year plan is to be in renewables and to not drill anymore, and then you get a new government in that may then want to, you know, wind back on that a little bit, but then start re-drilling. It needs that longer-term view, and that's probably too optimistic for me to think that that's ever going to happen. But it just seems like we're always dipping in and out of it all. But away from that bigger, probably full multi-series podcast we could probably have about the energy mix and everything like that, and we've had good people on so far to speak about that. I think the whole protected trades thing is a really good idea, and it's something that may help smaller contractors protect themselves against some of the real big boys in the industry, that, you know, some of the energy companies that are entering this area, where, you know, proving competency to have the ability to be an approved or, you know, a protected contractor status, and to be included in that, you really need to show that competency, because we are seeing some shenanigans going on in the energy world in terms of energy companies entering the installation business and maybe not having the right incentives to that. But I think you had a wider point about the training, because it didn't even come into my mind about the whole training link up to all of this. But I watched your reel, and you'd noticed a few things on that.
Yeah, so the government haven't been happy with just meddling around kind of DIY solar. Our sector has actually tried to regulate some changes to stop people who aren't electricians from being able to take these specialism courses. And I've mentioned before how that's caught out some of our aged electricians in industry who also can't now access those courses. So we're kind of moving some of those guys and girls away from our sector, which is a byproduct of a change that I think was needed, but has captured too many of the wrong people. However, the government, in their wisdom, through the Department for Education, have siloed out a couple of parts of the electrical apprenticeship into two or three individual units around PV, battery storage, and electric vehicles. And our industry bodies, so TESP, the Electro-Technical Skills Partnership, which is basically an accumulation of all of our industry bodies who represent us in terms of training and education. They put a post out saying that they weren't in support of that and that the resulting qualifications weren't mapped towards the EAS document. You won't be able to join a CPS provider, and you won't have the competence, if you've just said, to deliver those kind of installations. And to kind of advise people against taking those routes and options. And that kind of got me thinking, well, the Department for Education have brought this forward. That is effectively the government. Why the hell would they just sit there one day and think we're going to bring this forward? They wouldn't. Why would they want to do that? Like, the apprenticeship framework took 18 months to develop. I was part of the employer working group who took part in that, and that was modernising it to cover off elements of solar and battery and EV, and I pushed much harder to have more of that in the apprenticeship than what was actually put in place. It really is just a reference towards it rather than any specific training in it.
Yeah.
So to pull those units out and suggest that there are anything like the competencies needed to deliver those kind of works is scandalous, to be fair.
So on that then, just so that I get my head around it and people that are listening or watching get their head around it. So what's actually happened then is they've the solar PV, battery storage, EV, and all that side of things has been included in a wider scope in terms of like a full electrical apprenticeship document.
A modern day apprenticeship, what every electrician receives right now in colleges.
But so that was included. So what they've done then is they've gone, okay, well, we'll suck out those three bits, say the solar, the battery, and the EV.
Yep. And
we'll remove that from the scope of that apprenticeship, so that we can offer those separately. So does that affect the entry level of it?
It's still sat in our normal electrician's apprenticeship, so the units are still in there, but these are now separate apprenticeships of their own right.
So you can just get the apprenticeship in that.
Yes, so you can just enrol and do that, and the entry requirements for those courses are next to like normal English maths grades rather than being a qualified electrician.
So you don't have to be a qualified spark to learn how to fit a solar and battery system?
To take those specific units, so TESP, the people who represent us, are saying those qualifications don't meet that standard. But the question is, why do the Department for Education bring that forward and think that they do? And my suspicions were that the energy retailers, who are hand in glove with government quite a lot at the moment, are behind that, because allegedly lots of their employees are not actual electricians who are delivering some of these EV charge point installations and now solar PV and battery storage. And because of the changes in the EAS and the way that the competent person schemes work in having to evidence everybody's skills who were carrying out those work tasks, they were kind of struggling to upskill their workforce to be able to do it. So joining a few of those dots together led me to believe, and again, I'm just speculating, I can't prove that this is the case, that those courses have been taken out to allow those people to upskill in those areas and then have some sort of defined competence in the work that they're doing. The breakdown still would be for them in that position that it doesn't meet any of the requirements for MCS or even joining the competent person schemes more widely. But if they're already making efforts to do that, what else are they doing to circumnavigate MCS? We saw an energy retailer do just that with their own route to export MPANs already. So if they change the whole playing field rather than trying to play the game, it doesn't matter. If they've got their own route to get somebody an export MPAN, they've got people that they can say that we're adequately trained in their eyes. They've got a footing to stand upon, I suppose, and that's the scary element to it. And I think that's where the EAS specification has really broke down, because those courses, as we know through going through Electrician Plus training, are pretty weak in what they are anyway, so they're not much of a line to really demark our industry from people coming in fresh towards it. So I think that was a mistake we made. The fundamental principle of allowing only electricians to take those courses is great. I think that is much needed, and I support that. But the actual courses around it are too weak, nothing like what is actually needed, and that's led to this position of the energy retailers or government DFE being able to say, well, we can deliver that kind of training in a shorter period of time. We're going to do it.
It's just like a Groundhog Day, isn't it? It goes back to the whole like Part P kind of right. Like, how do we get people through stuff quick? How do we get people that tick in the box quick? It's like some of the solar testing is more complicated than standard electrical testing, and yet we're saying that people that 1 minute are fitting a, stacking a shelf, or 1 minute are, fitting an electricity meter, can suddenly just apply to start doing solar and battery installations, where you've got lithium batteries there, which so they're already terrified are going to cause house fires and everything. And suddenly we're saying, oh yeah, well, no worries. I know you've got no prior qualifications in this, but yet you can do an apprenticeship based on just doing solar and battery. And like you've said, if they can affect this change, and we're obviously only speculating, like you said, about it being an energy retailer or multiple of pushing this forward, well, what else can they circumnavigate in terms of, like you mentioned, MCS and everything? If they hold the keys to the things that people want, which is mainly when you get to that stage, and mainly with MCS, which is the export payments, then suddenly all of that just gets washed away, because people are like, well, the only thing I want MCS for is my export payments. So suddenly, if they can just offer that and streamline that service to their own employees that they've trained themselves and everything, then what's any of this stuff there for? Why do we have it?
Yeah, and I don't think any of the energy retailers are looking to kind of send us under as electrical contractors, if you like. They're looking for a workaround to deliver on the mass adoption figures the government are pestering them about. So they've got the government in their ear about who's going to install all these heat pumps and all these solar systems that we know that we need. And I've referenced it a lot, that it's kind of, and I've taken the phrase from Mike Jones, that abundance. I think we're about to enter an era of huge abundance for electricians. So I'm not especially worried about the earning potential for a qualified electrician or business owners in that sector. I think the prospects for us are really good. What I'm worried about is the safety and quality around a lot of the taxpayer spend going on behind all of this, that I think is going to end up being wasted, and it's not really necessary, but it is based on that rush, that condensed period of time we've set ourselves around net zero, and the amount of installations that we want to see delivered and have happened, and the taxpayer investment behind all of that, and it's all coming back to speed. And when government are looking at the electrical sector, we don't have the workforce to deliver on that. We've been poor at creating a young workforce ready for all of this. A lot of that is caused by government, by the way. They've massively affected the capability of employers to hire apprentices and have mentors in place to train them. So they kind of created that perfect storm. And now we're out the other side of that, where we want these skilled workers that aren't there. They're like, well, we're going to have to fast track this, and our only real way around it is to work with these energy retailers, and we'll try and deal with the problems. They just see it as a problem where an install goes wrong. Right, we'll learn from that, we'll do it better next time. But that could be somebody's house burning down.
Yeah.
The consequences that we see as diligent business owners wanting to do things safely, and it's just not really logical. I don't understand why we have that rush to try and achieve things by that set date, because it's just a date at the end of the day. We see it with HS2, we see it with electric vehicles, solar. It's like, let's just be realistic and set a goal that's attainable based on the people we have able to deliver that work, and support them in their business growth so they can train more people. I know we've got colleges full of loads of young people who are desperate for jobs to come out and work in our industry, and no one can actually employ them at the minute, which sounds counterintuitive when we're talking about the number of job roles and the installs that are needed. But it all comes back to this speed, this cost cutting. We've ended up in this pretty sticky wicket, to be honest, and it's not going to play out well, I don't think, in terms of the standards that are upheld on some of these installs. And we're seeing evidence of it already with some of the posts around shonky EV charge point installs and some of this solar stuff. And we've got the fire service who are really worried about some of these rooftop PV fires, as we've spoken about before. And I think there needs to be an element of getting real from the government side of things. And I thought I thought our electrical industry bodies had that in hand. They had the government's ear, and they were making the case for us, and that's what the EAS specification was all about. And my kind of gripe with that was that they'd cut too hard and affected too many of the older electricians, and they need to get that sorted, when actually, literally 2 weeks after I've been saying that, this then happened, and they're like, Jesus, this is even worse.
It's so frustrating, because like you said, the potential is there, and because we are at the start of this mass adoption phase for renewables, that goes across to heat pumps and everything, in terms of the plumbing and heating side, is that we've only got one opportunity to do the mass adoption phase right, and it's done right by the individuals on site on that day. And if you're not able to get the right people in to that have been trained properly, that are then willing to pass on their skills for the next generation, then you're not actually building any sort of valuable workforce in the country. You are just paying people to fit something in a certain way for a certain amount of time, and they've got no valuable skills after that to pass on. They've just got what they've managed to work out over time, but it's not based on the old school type kind of training where people are shown old jigs for things and like ways to do things in a certain way that not only gave that install longevity, but made people have real pride in their work. And I think as soon as you erode that and people don't have pride in their work, then they're not bothered about trying to get other people to have pride in their work. It's just all a speed game. And as soon as you enter the speed game, where you can either decide to be really quick or slightly slow but do a really good quality job, then if it's all about speed, then people don't even really think about the quality side, and with that you're just setting yourself up for a lot of problems in the future, like we've seen with the external wall installation that they did, and all of that. And now I think it's like 80 or 90% of that needs taking off and redoing, and you just set yourself up for problems further down the road in the hunt for speed. And I have this gripe about the new builds and how many new homes they want to build. It's like, if we do not have the workforce there that's been adequately trained, then we're going to build basically a load of leaking sheds. We're not going to build proper homes that we have of old, where they're solid built, they've been thought out, and not perfect, but they are thought out in ready for the next 10, 20 years. Not just a leaky shed that they can sell at a massive margin. So I don't want to keep it too pessimistic, but I think it's important to try and probably put on record what probably a lot of people listening to this podcast are thinking about this, and thinking, well, where's the room for quality? Where's the market for quality? And I think end users, even though it can be hard, especially when everyone's talking about price and speed, I think end users can be coaxed to go for a quality install, because actually when you weigh up the investment of, say, a 15 grand investment, if it's 15 grand investment from a company that installs things correctly, that installs things to a high quality, or a 13 grand investment from a big company that's just looking to smash it in half the time that the other company's going to do it, then people can weigh up that difference in cost, and I'd love to believe people would actually go, yeah, I'm going to go for the more quality option, because in theory it's only 2 grand extra and I'm already spending 13 or 15 grand. But maybe I'm just too optimistic with that.
No, I don't think you are. We see that in our daily conversations with consumers. There'll be those that are just shopping on price, but lots of them do want to feel like they're getting value from the money that they're spending. And I guess it's the same if you're buying any big ticket bit of kit, be it a car or whatever. There's different ways you can scale that value, isn't there? And sometimes the price isn't always, when we know it isn't, it's not where the value actually sits, and the government need to understand that as well when they're spending taxpayers' money. Getting something cheap and that works today isn't necessarily the best life cycle value for something that's intended to last for 25 years. You get that by maybe spending a little bit more at the beginning, to ensure that you get the maximum benefit from that over that duration. And we have conversations with our customers about that, where they're looking at the kit they're having installed and the way that it will work with its app, the warranty periods from the brand, the manufacturer behind this stuff, how it will integrate with an energy tariff, and the future prospects of scaling it and having kit to maintain it. And then that's before you get to the worries around the actual installation process of, will my roof leak afterwards? Will you be out of business in 18 months and not be able to service anything or replace stuff when it goes wrong? You know, all those kind of questions come into play as well. So I think in terms of a company that's kind of pitching into that marketplace, I think that demand is very much there from people who will see that value. Is where always things fall apart is that those who can't afford to have choice and are left with what is kind of put forward to them as, well, this is what you can have, and your other option is you don't have it. I don't think that is getting best value for those people or the taxpayers who are ultimately funding it, which is all of us.
Yeah, it is, and there's going to be a lot of work there for companies in the future, probably fixing a lot of this stuff, which is, you know, it's not exactly the nicest work, but it's work there, and it just feels like we're just looking at this all in the wrong way, that we've got the mechanisms to roll this out at scale in terms of you know, the warm homes plan, and if we get the training right, it means that, you know, the people fitting it will be fitting it to a high bar if we get the training right. And all this stuff seems very simple for us as two Sparkies chatting in a van, and I'm sure there's other complications around that and what have you, but I think sometimes we need to resort back to the simplest solutions and the simplest kind of ideas, which is quality training, quality products, and quality service. And if that's kind of your focus, then all the rest will come. You know, yes, the rollout of the homes may take a second parliament, might not take you might not be able to do it in 4 years, but it means that when that's looked back on over the last 10, 20 years, people can look back on and go, wow, they really did their thing with that, and they really pushed the quality element of that. Whereas instead, I feel like we're going to look back on this over the next few years and go, you know what, I wish we'd done that slightly differently and really tried to protect who was fitting this kit.
Yeah, I think as we pull into the first service station for our first rapid charge in the electric van, we do need to mention that in another podcast we might record while we're in this van.
Yeah.
But I think that's a good way to end the chat. And you're right. What better way to leave some sort of legacy into industry that, you know, we did a good job and we trained people to have high-skilled, well-paid jobs in the process of doing so. What is wrong with that? You know, this is an investment in people's careers as well as the infrastructure behind it. And you know, there's a big call for that in the UK at the moment around our job creation, and this is an opportunity for us that we should grasp rather than waste. And my hope is that the government see that, and rather than react in these kind of knee-jerk ways and get things out of kilter, they take things forward more positively, and it plays out in the way that I hope rather than the way we probably both expect. But that's me done on that one, unless you've got anything else you want to add.
That's me done as well. It's been nice to air those chats in a longer form way than just an Instagram 3-minute reel. So thank you very much for listening to that, and thanks again obviously for all of you guys watching and listening at home. I hope the van chat has been an interesting one for you, and maybe do some more of these if we get the opportunity to go further afield, and it's been quite nice just having it a little bit more informal and just having a chat to you like in the van like we do even when we're not being filmed. So thank you very much for watching another episode of the Renewables podcast. If you aren't already following us or subscribed to us, then why not head over to YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever it is that you watch or listen to the podcasts, and hit that button. It shows us some support and really helps us push forward with the guests that we can get on, and also the amount of episodes that we can release. So thank you very much for watching. If you have got a little bit of spare cash as well that you'd like to put towards the podcast, then we do have like a members subscription that we have on Spotify, which really helps us with the funding for the podcast, and we'd really appreciate you showing your support there as well. But if you just keep listening to us, then that's enough as well. Thank you very much, and we'll see you on the next one.